Today we're standing here at the northern end of the King Range National Conservation Area. I first saw this landscape in 2016. Well, as you can see just by looking around, this is just a really beautiful place, and there are abundant resources, and people have wanted to live here for thousands of years. There are resources on land, in the rivers, and in the ocean. And in fact, we have multiple archaeological sites scattered throughout the King Range that date back thousands of years ago.
I mean, obviously, like with the cultural resources here, we want to be able to predict erosion and the rates of erosion, and then know where things are uplifting or where they're subsiding, and so we can kind of make a long-term plan for how to manage those sensitive cultural resources. Likewise, we might want to be able to make informed long-term decisions about trail locations or road locations, or where, you know, if there's climate change that we're going to see sea level rise, and it's going to present management challenges in the future. So having all of this really accurately described is really useful.
So right where we're standing, this region right here, this little bubble, there's a lot of tectonic forces at work. The ground's being splintered up really quick, and we're standing out here on these broad flats, which not too long ago in the geologic past were old beaches. And so there's a series of stair steps along the coast here that kind of reflect this rapid uplift of the coast due to all these tectonic forces at work here. And we can look in the soil and find rounded beach pebbles that indicate the old beaches. So really a really dynamic landscape here in the King Range, which really takes us to the project at hand, looking at erosion. A lot of rapid uplift, a lot of rainfall here means there's a lot of erosion.
And we just wanted to get a better handle on how quickly is that erosional process affecting these sites. After talking with Sam, reached out to our state archaeologist, and he told me there's a geospatial team at the NOC that might be able to help me with a study like that. You know, rather than just placing like stakes or markers in the ground and measuring over to the marine terrace and monitoring erosion that way, we wanted something that used the latest technology and was a little bit better approach. The other tool we already had was historic photos that qualitatively showed that erosion, but they were kind of an oblique view and not a plan view. And so again, we really couldn't quantify what that rate of erosion was. So the geospatial team recommended that we collect very high resolution imagery for photogrammetry, and then they could bring in some LiDAR data with that. And we would create a baseline that showed us where the coastline is today, and then we would continue to collect data to watch how that coastline might change.
This project started in around 2018. The archaeologists from the local field office contacted our section at the National Operations Center, and they were anticipating that there could be issues with, you know, erosion damaging some of these resources, but they really didn't have necessarily a plan in terms of estimating that rate of change or documenting that change. And so they asked for assistance for our group. And so we basically did a literature review to see if there were any information out there already on how fast these areas were changing. And what we found is that it's very dynamic along the length of the coast. And so what we started doing is using remotely sensed data, laser scans from aircraft, as well as what we're collecting here today on the ground, to create these surfaces and look at how they're changing over time. So we have 10 or 12 monitoring zones that stretch the length of the King Range. Many of them are quite inaccessible, so it makes it challenging in that it is difficult to access those areas frequently. So the type of data that we're generating is something where, you know, we can create a full three-dimensional model of that area and come up with analysis and other ways to measure that change, you know, back in the office and really get a much more detailed picture. It's often up to the field office or the local office to interpret those numbers and make those planning and management decisions accordingly. So our support is really kind of getting those numbers that we can trust and we can use in planning.
You know, I can stand here at the big picture and tell you there's a lot of erosion happening here, but until we can really dive in with a more detailed geospatial look at stuff and look at stuff through time with all the technology we have, we can really start to kind of parse out areas of the coastline that we're most concerned about, whether they're cultural resources, trail issues along the coast.
I don't pretend to understand the processing that they've done of the photos and the LiDAR. All I can say is the GIS products that they have created to date are just amazing. And we've already learned so much just from the various charts and graphs and maps and things that they've created. We've already learned that there are some very specific zones where erosion is happening much more quickly than other zones. We've learned that the erosion seems to be happening a little more quickly along the southern portion of the coastline of the King Range versus the northern portion. What I can do now with that data is I can list the archaeological sites that are located along the coastline, and I can rank them in priority as to which sites are most vulnerable to erosion down to those sites that are not so vulnerable to erosion. And once I have those sites ranked, we can start talking management strategy. We can go to the tribes, we can sit down around the table, we can look at this data, we can talk about what are our options here. Do we need to test these sites a little bit more to see what deposits might be left? Are we looking at a testing program, excavation, or just allowing natural processes to continue to occur?
History emerges from the landscape, and it's like you have to know what to look for, and whether it's geologically or cultural artifacts, but there's a huge story here, and it's an exciting story really that tells us a lot about the place we live, the people that were here before us, and the people that we are now.
And just being able to work with the geospatial team to get some data about how that erosion might be happening, what are the dynamic processes along the coastline, where are we seeing erosion, where are we seeing accretion. It's giving me a direction that I can go, that I can move in, and then go to the tribes and share this data with them. And we have something to work with, and I think it's going to lead to much better management of our non-renewable cultural resources here at King Range.